All right, today's article is going to be all about analyzing this article with a video about video games. So, if you like video games, hopefully you find this interesting. But let's start with looking at the image. Okay, so the caption says video game play involves repeated actions that strengthen connections in the brain related to memory and thinking or learning. So I want us to start by looking at this image. What do you see when you're looking at the image of these three girls? Maybe you see things like they're looking at a computer screen. Maybe it's wintertime. They've got coats on. Maybe you can think maybe they live in a city because of the background. But what I want you to think is kind of what they're looking at. So the title of our article is The Vortex of Video Games, the Positive and Negative Effects. Video games are one of the most popular toys for kids of all ages, but are they good or bad? I want you to think to yourself, do you think video games are good or do you think they're not? Some brain researchers believe there are positive effects of playing video games, including giving the brain and the neurotransmitters in it a real mental workout. So I feel like this is important, that there are positives to playing video games, and they're talking about how like it's making your brain work. You have to think a little bit deeper. So there's like the pros of it. Let's see if they give us any more. There are many positive effects of playing video games, including increased problem solving and logic. So problem solving basically means that like if you're given a situation and you need to figure out how to get through it or figure out a solution, you are able to. Logic means you're able to use a logical way to answer something or to solve a problem. And then it gives us an example. For example, the game Angry Birds trains the brain to come up with creative ways to solve problems quickly. Other positive benefits are hand-eye coordination, perseverance, memory, and concentration. So hand-eye coordination kind of goes like with playing sports. You usually have to have good hand-eye coordination in order to be able to be successful. Perseverance just means being able to continue on through and not giving up, which I feel like in video games, if you want to win or if you want to get to the next level or beat the game, you have to persevere. You have to keep going and not give up. It also talks about memory and concentration. So I feel like obviously concentration makes sense because when you're playing, you want to be able to pay attention to what you're doing, right? And not get distracted. Memory is also good too because if you have to kind of go through a sequence of things, you want to make sure you're doing the same thing every time that you were successful, and then you change how it wasn't successful the time before. I don't play many video games, so I may not be able to explain this as best as someone else could, but that's kind of the positive effects of playing video games. Now it says, however, so that's a signal word that we're going to talk about on the opposite side. Some scientists believe there are many negative effects of playing video games. Violence is the number one negative effect because many children are exposed to graphic violence through violent video games. Other negative effects can be social isolation and becoming withdrawn, obesity, poor performance in school, and attention problems. So let's kind of dissect these individually. Obviously, if there's going to be violent video games, there's probably going to be some things that you're exposed to that either you normally wouldn't be or that may not be suitable for your age. And then talks about social isolation and being withdrawn. So if you're playing video games when you're not in school, when you're not with your family eating or whatever, that's all you're ever doing, you become withdrawn. You're just kind of playing by yourself. You don't really want to go into crowds. Maybe you're just kind of hanging low, which is fine. It's okay to be an introvert. But I think if you're spending a majority of your time playing video games, that could become an issue. Now it also says obesity. I feel like if you're just sitting all these hours of the day and not getting up and being active, that'll increase your, if you eat while you do it, it could increase your calorie intake, but it's also decreasing your athletic performance throughout the day as well. Even if it's just walking, video games, you can't really do that with. And then it also says poor performance in school and attention problems. Maybe you're sleeping during school because you were up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning playing video games. A lot of kids last year would admit this to me. I'm just like, okay, like how do I get you to pay attention in class when you're falling asleep? And then attention, once again, if you're falling asleep, you can't really participate. And then finally it says, although video games are better than TV, they can be good and bad. So we didn't really talk about TV at all, but we do kind of talk about the good and bad things of video games. So this video that I'm going to show you will talk a little bit about video games and what they feel like are the positive and negative effects as well. Do you think there are any other positives or negatives that video games could have? I'm not going to give my input, but I would like you to share what you think. And then how do you think this article is written? Do you think it is written in a problem and solution, cause and effect, compare and contrast, sequence, or do you think it is description? I think the best option would probably be um, compare and contrast because you're comparing and contrasting the positives and the negatives of video games. So then going back to the video, here it is.
A new study says that video games are totally harmless. Kind of. In a way. Hey guys, Anthony here for Team News along with my pal Tara Law.
Hi.
Who reviews games over on our sister channel Rev3 Games and also hosts a new show called Hard Science with me.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, sure. You know, Tara, we talked a little while back about Grand Theft Auto 5 and other violent video games and their effects on our brains.
Yeah? How'd that go over for you?
Reaction was mixed, and understandably so, because it seems that every study that gives video games an academic high five, there is another one that shows that they can actually harm us. They either do or they don't cause ADHD. They do or they don't cause violent behavior or discipline problems, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of been hard actually to show a direct causal link between video games and any kind of positive or negative behavior. And that's probably because the truth is actually incredibly complex. Everything we do in life, I know, believe it or not, everything we do in life has good and bad effects. If you were to go run a marathon and get super buff, you'd probably have a lot of knee problems later in life.
That is the most hypothetical of all
Yes,
situations.
it really is.
A couple days ago, some findings were published as part of the UK Millennium Cohort study that seemed to be in the pro gaming camp. A lot of gaming outlets picked it up because the headline basically said 11,000 kids tested over 10 years show no negative effects from video games. But it is important to know that that was not actually a study that was just about video games.
Right, so the Millennial Cohort Study is this survey following the lives of 19,000 children who were born in either 2000 or 2001. Every 3 years, they basically check in with the kids and their families. They collect a ton of data about pretty much every aspect of their lives. The study that was released this week by the University of Glasgow analyzed some data from the cohort study all about the effects of on-screen entertainment on children.
Okay, so that is TV and video games, and they studied them separately, which is not something that is usually done. And their conclusion was that watching TV for 3 hours or more every day at the age of 5 was connected to basic conduct and discipline issues in kids by the age of 7. But TV didn't seem to affect hyperactivity or inattention. There were no relationship or social issues, and video games didn't seem to affect the kids at all, in any way, negatively.
Yes, and the bad effects of TV were seen equally in boys and girls, which I think is really interesting because usually these kinds of studies lean more towards boys having more behavioral problems when it comes to watching TV.
That's true. Yay, video games!
Yay, girls!
Yay, girls being as messed up as boys!
I'll take it.
Yeah!
Yes. Hold on, though, because studies based on surveys like this aren't always the most accurate, especially with a sample size this large. There could be other reasons why these behavioral issues are showing up. For instance, kids in the study played way fewer hours of video games than they did watching TV. And parents tend to be a little bit stricter about video games for their kids than they do with TV.
Gotcha. So parents thinking TV is less harmless than video games leads them to let their kids watch a ton of TV, and that becomes detrimental. But playing as many hours of video games could have had the same effect, or worse.
Right, yeah. If anything, it's just nice to know that TV and video games don't really seem to have a connection to ADHD or social issues, which are two of the big accusations that are always leveled at them.
Awesome. So I can play video games? Okay.
I feel like most of the damage has been done on you, so yeah, go for it.
Great. We don't just play video games, though.
Yes, don't let these deep, rich tans fool you.
We also go out and build and do stupid things in the name of science. You can go check it out on our new channel, youtube.com/hardscienceshow. You can watch Tara's game reviews on youtube.com/rev3games. and you can subscribe here for more D News.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of review a little bit what the video is saying. All right, so I just wanted to kind of talk about the video a little bit. So when they started off, they talked about how there are positive and negatives to everything that you do in life, everything that you eat, that you participate in, literally everything, which I feel like is definitely true. And they kind of showed us how video games are kind of getting a bad review, and then kind of what they think about it as well. So it said watching TV can have those negative effects, but actually playing those video games, it wasn't really happening. It was the exact opposite, actually. And then the thing I found was really interesting is what they said about girls and boys and the effects that video games had on them. So what do you think? Were the boys affected more, were the girls, or was it the same? It was actually pretty equal, which is, I think, very interesting how they react as a result of watching TV or playing video games. And then I also said that contrary to what most people believe, so this is a contrast and contradiction, TV and video games are not linked to ADHD or other disabilities that people think about. They're like, if you play these games too much, you'll have an attention disorder, or you'll be able to focus and things like that. And they're like, actually, research shows that it doesn't. So I want to compare and contrast a little bit the article to the video. I think the article was more so in favor of one over the other, but the article did talk about the pros and cons of both. I think the video mainly talked about how video games shouldn't get as bad of a reputation as they do. And then the article kind of talked about, although there's good and bad things, TV is worse. So they both talked about TV being worse. The video did better about talking about how video games are not as bad. And that's kind of the big takeaway, was the comparing and the contrasting of the two.